Picture this. You're standing in your childhood garage, surrounded by what your parents call expensive junk, holding a rejection letter from the 15th investor who thinks your invention is too risky to fund. Your mother's voice echoes from the kitchen, asking when you're finally going to get serious about your career. Your father walks past, shaking his head at the metal contraptions scattered across workbenches that used to hold Christmas decorations. Now imagine your phone buzzing with an email that changes everything. The sender? Tesla's legal department. The subject line? An offer that makes everyone who doubted you suddenly very, very quiet. I'm Maria Elena Vasquez, and 3 months ago, my entire family thought I was wasting my mechanical engineering degree on what they called garage fantasies. They had already planned what felt like a career intervention, complete with job applications they'd filled out on my behalf. They had no idea that Tesla was about to offer me $2.4 million for the manufacturing innovation I'd been perfecting in that same garage they wanted me to clean out and convert back into actual car storage. Before we jump back, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in Riverside, California, in a household where my father Miguel worked double shifts at the local Ford plant, and my mother Carmen cleaned houses for wealthy families in Newport Beach, I learned early that stability meant everything. Our modest 2-bedroom home sat in a neighborhood where American dreams were measured in steady paychecks, health insurance, and the ability to make mortgage payments without anxiety attacks at 3 a.m. Miguel Vasquez had worked the assembly line for 22 years, his hands permanently stained with industrial lubricants and his back chronically aching from repetitive motions that built trucks for families who earned more in a month than he made in a year. Carmen rose at 4:30 every morning to prepare breakfast for a family she saw more than her own, returning home exhausted but proud of the honest work that kept our lights on and food on the table. Their dreams for me were simultaneously humble and enormous. Get your education, they'd say over dinner plates filled with rice, beans, and whatever protein had been on sale that week. Study engineering like your cousin Roberto, who now lives in that nice house in Irvine. Work for a company with benefits. Build something stable that your children can depend on. When I graduated from UC Riverside with my mechanical engineering degree, summa cum laude with a specialization in manufacturing systems, their pride was almost tangible. They attended my graduation ceremony wearing their best church clothes. Miguel in a tie he wore maybe 3 times a year, Carmen in a dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion and had been planning for months. The photograph they took of me holding my diploma still sits on their mantelpiece, right next to their wedding picture and a portrait of the Virgin of Guadalupe. My first job at Northrop Grumman felt like vindication of every sacrifice they'd made. I wore professional attire to an office building with security badges and parking structures, received regular paychecks with actual benefits, and worked on projects that sounded impressive when I described them at family gatherings. Systems integration engineer for aerospace manufacturing processes. Even saying it made my parents beam with satisfaction. For 18 months, I fulfilled every expectation they'd carefully constructed around my future. I arrived at work by 7:30 each morning, attended meetings where I nodded appropriately at project timelines and budget constraints, and gradually climbed the predictable ladder of corporate advancement. My supervisor praised my attention to detail. My colleagues respected my technical knowledge. My parents introduced me to neighbors as their daughter, the engineer who works on airplanes. Everything changed during a mandatory overtime weekend, when I stayed late to troubleshoot a recurring problem in our automated riveting system. The machine had been jamming consistently every 47 minutes, forcing technicians to manually reset the alignment and causing production delays that cost thousands of dollars per incident. Management had accepted this as an unavoidable quirk of complex machinery, budgeting for the lost time and occasional replacement parts. Sitting alone in the humming factory floor at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, watching the same mechanical failure repeat itself with clockwork precision, I suddenly saw the solution with startling clarity. The problem wasn't random mechanical, wear, or software glitches like everyone assumed. It was a fundamental design flaw in the pneumatic pressure regulation system that could be eliminated entirely with a relatively simple modification to the sensor feedback loop. I spent the rest of that weekend sketching modifications on napkins from the break room vending machine, calculating pressure differentials on the back of safety instruction sheets, and mentally redesigning the entire sensor array with components that would cost less than the current system while eliminating the failure mode completely. By Sunday evening, I had outlined a manufacturing process improvement that would save Northrop Grumman approximately $200,000 annually, while increasing production efficiency by 12%. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with my supervisor to present the solution. David Chen, a methodical man in his 50s who had worked his way up through the engineering ranks over 2 decades, listened politely to my presentation before explaining why it wouldn't work. The current system had been designed by experienced engineers who had considered all possible alternatives. The jamming issue was within acceptable tolerance levels for industrial equipment. Modifications would require extensive testing, regulatory approval, and budget allocations that exceeded my authority level. The dismissal stung, but I understood corporate hierarchy and risk aversion. What bothered me more was realizing that I could see solutions that experienced engineers either couldn't recognize or were too institutionally constrained to pursue. That weekend, I began researching manufacturing efficiency problems across different industries, discovering that similar preventable failures were costing companies millions of dollars annually because everyone accepted them as unavoidable aspects of automated production. The seed of an idea that would eventually attract Tesla's attention was planted during those late-night research sessions. I started imagining manufacturing systems designed from scratch, with failure prevention built into their core architecture rather than addressed as an afterthought. Instead of designing machines that occasionally broke down and required fixing, what if we designed machines that literally could not fail in the ways that caused expensive delays? 3 months later, when I submitted my resignation letter to David Chen, his reaction was predictably professional and quietly disappointed. "Maria, you have a promising career here," he said while reviewing my 2 weeks' notice. "Corporate engineering might seem slow, but it provides security and advancement, opportunities that independent ventures simply cannot match." "I appreciate the opportunity," I replied, "but I need to explore some ideas that wouldn't be appropriate to develop using company resources." The conversation I had with my parents that evening was significantly more emotional and substantially less understanding. I drove to their house directly from work, still wearing my Northrop Grumman badge and carrying a folder full of technical drawings that represented months of obsessive calculation and design refinement. Carmen was preparing dinner when I arrived, stirring a pot of pozole that filled the kitchen with the comforting aromas of childhood. Miguel sat at the small dining table, reading the Spanish-language newspaper and occasionally commenting on political developments that seemed increasingly disconnected from our immediate concerns. I waited until we were all seated around the table, bowls steaming with hominy and pork, before explaining my decision to leave aerospace engineering and pursue independent innovation. The words felt surreal as I spoke them, describing my plan to develop manufacturing efficiency solutions that could revolutionize automated production across multiple industries. I outlined the market opportunity, the technical feasibility, and the potential for creating something genuinely valuable rather than simply maintaining existing systems. Carmen's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth as the implications of my announcement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Miguel folded his newspaper carefully, the way he did when preparing to deliver serious observations about family matters or neighborhood developments that required careful consideration. "Mija," Carmen said slowly, her voice carrying the particular weight of maternal concern that had guided family decisions throughout my childhood. "You just got promoted to senior associate engineer. Why would you abandon a stable career for something so uncertain?" Miguel nodded in agreement, his calloused hands clasped together on the table in front of him. Engineering jobs with benefits and retirement plans don't grow on trees, he added. Your cousin Roberto has been at Raytheon for 8 years now. He owns a house, takes vacations, has security for his family. I tried to explain the vision that had consumed my thoughts for months, describing the manufacturing innovations that could prevent countless hours of downtime and save companies millions of dollars while improving working conditions for people like Miguel, who spent their careers accommodating inefficient industrial processes. But as I spoke, I watched their expressions shift from confusion to disappointment, to something approaching fear. The concept of deliberately abandoning security to pursue uncertain innovation felt not just impractical to them, but almost morally questionable. They had sacrificed enormously to provide opportunities that I was now casually discarding. Carmen had cleaned bathrooms in mansions to pay for my engineering textbooks. Miguel had worked overtime shifts that left him exhausted and sore to cover my university expenses. The idea that I would voluntarily return to financial uncertainty after they had invested everything in my education felt like a rejection of their dreams as much as a risky career decision. Only my younger sister Isabella, who was finishing her computer science degree at Cal Poly Pomona, showed any enthusiasm for my plans. After our parents went to bed, she found me sitting on the back porch, staring at technical drawings spread across the patio table under the dim outdoor light. This could actually change manufacturing forever, she whispered, studying my sketches with genuine fascination. You should absolutely pursue this, Maria. Don't let fear stop you from building something revolutionary. Her support meant everything. During those early weeks when doubt crept in during 3 a.m. moments of clarity about the magnitude of the challenge I had undertaken, Isabella became my unofficial sounding board, listening to my technical explanations and asking questions that helped me refine my approach while providing emotional encouragement when family pressure made persistence feel impossible. The garage that would eventually house my breakthrough innovation was attached to a small rental house in Corona, California, that I found through a Craigslist advertisement posted by an elderly woman who needed help with property maintenance, in exchange for reduced rent. Mrs. Dorothy Patterson, a retired schoolteacher whose husband had been a machinist for 30 years before his death, agreed to let me convert half of her 2-car garage into a workshop space as long as I maintained the property and helped with occasional household repairs. Dorothy became an unexpected ally during the months that followed. She would bring me coffee during late-night work sessions and listen with patient curiosity as I explained the technical challenges I was attempting to solve. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Unlike my family, who viewed my garage activities with increasing concern, Dorothy seemed genuinely interested in the innovation process and would occasionally offer observations about manufacturing problems her late husband had encountered during his career in precision machining. Your father would have loved watching you work, she told me one evening as I calibrated sensors on my latest prototype. He always said the best engineers were the ones who couldn't stop thinking about how to make things work better. Dorothy's encouragement provided a buffer against the growing pressure from family gatherings, where relatives increasingly questioned my career decisions and offered unsolicited advice about returning to traditional employment. The first functional prototype of my automated alignment system took 7 months to build, working primarily with secondhand equipment purchased from industrial surplus dealers and components ordered through online marketplaces that catered to independent inventors and small manufacturing operations. Every evening after leaving my part-time consulting job that barely covered living expenses, I would spend hours in Dorothy's garage, machining components with borrowed tools and testing sensor configurations that gradually evolved into something approaching professional-grade manufacturing equipment. The breakthrough came during a particularly frustrating week when nothing seemed to work correctly. I had been trying to solve a timing synchronization problem that prevented my sensors from communicating effectively with the mechanical alignment system. After 3 consecutive nights of failed testing, I was ready to abandon the entire approach and try a completely different technical architecture. Friday evening, exhausted and discouraged, I decided to run one final test before cleaning up for the weekend. Instead of using the complex sensor array I had been developing, I simplified the entire system down to its most basic components and adjusted the timing sequence based on an intuitive modification that had occurred to me during lunch. The test run was flawless. Every mechanical movement synchronized perfectly. Every sensor provided accurate feedback, and the alignment precision exceeded my most optimistic expectations. I stood in Dorothy's garage at 11:30 p.m., watching my machine complete cycle after cycle of perfect automated alignment, and realized that I had solved the fundamental problem that had been consuming my thoughts for months. The innovation that would eventually attract Tesla's attention was born in that moment of unexpected success, built with determination that my family couldn't understand, and persistence that their practical wisdom suggested was foolish. But as I called Isabella to share the news of my breakthrough, hearing her excitement echo through the phone, I knew that some risks are worth taking regardless of who believes they make sense. News of my resignation from Northrop Grumman spread through our extended family with the speed and drama typically reserved for scandals or medical emergencies. Within 48 hours, I received concerned phone calls from 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and my godmother, all expressing variations of the same bewildered question: why would I abandon a prestigious engineering position to tinker with machines in a garage? The family barbecue that weekend became an informal tribunal where relatives took turns offering their perspectives on my career decision. Uncle Carlos, who managed a successful auto repair shop in East LA, approached me while I helped flip carne asada on the backyard grill. "Misha," he said with the authority of someone who had built his own business from nothing, "I understand wanting to work for yourself, but you need customers before you quit your day job. What you're doing is backward." Aunt Sophia, Carmen's younger sister who worked as a bank manager, was more direct in her assessment. She cornered me near the cooler filled with Coronas and Churritos, her voice lowered to the conspiratorial tone she used for delivering unwelcome but necessary truths. "Your parents are worried sick," she informed me. "They sacrificed everything so you could have security, and now you're throwing it away for some crazy inventor fantasy. When are you going to grow up and be realistic?" The most painful conversation came from my grandmother, Esperanza, who had immigrated from Guadalajara in the 1960s with nothing but determination and unwavering faith in the power of education to transform her family's circumstances. She pulled me aside as the evening wound down, her weathered hands gripping mine with surprising strength. "Nieta," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of 7 decades of hard-won wisdom, "I worked in factories so your mother could go to school. Your mother cleaned houses so you could become an engineer. Why are you going backward?" These conversations haunted me during the following weeks as I established my routine as an independent inventor. Every morning, I would wake up in my small rental house, drink coffee while reviewing technical drawings, then drive to my part-time consulting position at a local manufacturing firm that provided just enough income to cover basic expenses. Evenings and weekends belonged entirely to my workshop in Dorothy's garage, where I continued refining the automated alignment system that had shown such promising initial results. The financial reality of my situation became increasingly precarious as months passed. Consulting work provided approximately $2,000 monthly, barely covering rent, utilities, food, and the ongoing materials costs for prototype development. My savings from 18 months at Northrop Grumman dwindled steadily as I purchased sensors, actuators, programming equipment, and specialized tools necessary for precision manufacturing work. Carmen's approach to expressing concern evolved, from direct confrontation to subtle manipulation, designed to highlight the contrast between my current circumstances and the stability I had abandoned. During weekly phone calls, she would casually mention former colleagues who had received promotions, friends whose engineer children had purchased homes, or news about companies hiring experienced professionals with attractive benefit packages. "Did you hear that Rodriguez's daughter just got promoted to project manager at Boeing?" she would say while describing her week. "She bought a new car last month, one of those reliable Hondas that will last forever, and benefits that cover everything, even dental work." Miguel's contributions were more direct but equally pointed. Every Sunday dinner ended with updates about available positions at local manufacturing companies, complete with salary ranges and contact information for hiring managers who might be interested in my aerospace background. Isabella remained my primary source of emotional support during this period. But even her encouragement came with growing concern about my financial sustainability. She would visit the workshop most Saturday afternoons, bringing groceries she claimed were extras from her own shopping, but which I suspected she purchased specifically to supplement my increasingly basic diet of rice, beans, and whatever protein was cheapest that week. "Your prototype is incredible," she would say while watching me test sensor calibrations. "But how long can you keep this up without any income? Have you considered applying for grants or trying to find an investor who understands manufacturing technology?" Her questions reflected the same underlying anxiety that motivated our parents' pressure, though delivered with supportive intentions rather than implicit criticism. The breakthrough that would eventually change everything came during a particularly discouraging period in late autumn when my consulting contract ended and finding replacement work proved more difficult than anticipated. Manufacturing firms were hesitant to hire someone who had voluntarily left a stable aerospace position, viewing my career trajectory as evidence of unreliability or unrealistic expectations about independent consulting opportunities. For 3 weeks, I survived on savings while sending resumes to potential clients and continuing workshop sessions that felt increasingly like expensive hobbies rather than productive innovation efforts. Dorothy noticed my stress during one of our evening conversations when she brought coffee to the garage and found me staring blankly at technical drawings instead of actively working on mechanical adjustments. "You look like my husband used to when he was solving a particularly difficult machining problem," she observed, settling into the folding chair she kept in the workshop for these informal mentoring sessions. "He would get that same expression when the solution was right there, but just out of reach." "What's really bothering you, dear?" I explained my growing concerns about financial sustainability and the increasing pressure from family members who viewed my garage activities as confirmation that I had made a catastrophic career mistake. Dorothy listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as I described the gap between my technical progress and my ability to translate innovation into actual income. When I finished speaking, Dorothy was quiet for several minutes, studying my prototype with the thoughtful expression she wore when considering complex problems. Finally, she turned back to me with a slight smile that suggested she had reached some internal conclusion about my situation. "My husband used to say that the hardest part of innovation wasn't solving technical problems," she said. "It was convincing other people that your solution was worth paying for. He spent years developing a new type of cutting tool that worked better than anything else available, but nobody wanted to try it because they were comfortable with tools that worked well enough." She paused, sipping her coffee while I absorbed this perspective on the challenge I was facing. Eventually, she continued, "He found one small company that was desperate enough to try anything new. They loved his cutting tool so much that they told their suppliers about it, and those suppliers told their customers. And within 2 years, he had more orders than he could fill." Dorothy's story reminded me that innovation required not just technical excellence, but also finding the right initial customers who would be willing to test unproven solutions in exchange for potential competitive advantages. I had been focusing entirely on perfecting my automated alignment system without seriously considering who might be willing to try it first. That weekend, I spent Saturday researching small and medium-sized manufacturing companies in Southern California that might be experiencing the types of production efficiency problems my system was designed to solve. Instead of approaching large corporations with established suppliers and lengthy approval processes, I decided to target companies that were small enough to make quick decisions and desperate enough to consider innovative solutions. My first breakthrough came through an unexpected connection that developed during a chance encounter at Home Depot. where I was purchasing materials for workshop improvements. While loading metal stock into my car, I struck up a conversation with another customer who was buying similar materials for what he described as modifications to manufacturing equipment at his family's business. Frank Morales owned Pacific Precision Manufacturing, a small company in Anaheim that produced custom components for medical device manufacturers. His operation employed 12 people and specialized in precision machining work that required extremely tight tolerances and consistent quality standards. During our parking lot conversation, Frank mentioned ongoing problems with alignment consistency that were causing quality control issues and occasional rejected batches. When I described my automated alignment system and its potential applications. For precision manufacturing, Frank's interest was immediate and genuine. "This sounds exactly like what we need," he said, handing me his business card. "Would you be willing to come look at our operation and see if your system might work for our specific requirements?" The following Tuesday, I spent 3 hours at Pacific Precision Manufacturing, observing their production processes and identifying opportunities where my alignment technology could improve efficiency and quality. Frank's operation was exactly the type of customer I had been seeking: small enough to make quick decisions, sophisticated enough to appreciate technical innovation, and experiencing specific problems that my system could solve. After completing my assessment, I proposed a 30-day trial period where I would install a prototype alignment system on one of their production lines in exchange for feedback, performance data, and a testimonial if the results met their expectations. Frank agreed immediately, eager to test a solution that could address persistent quality control challenges that were affecting customer satisfaction and profit margins. Installing my first commercial prototype at Pacific Precision Manufacturing felt like a validation of months of isolated workshop development. For 2 weeks, I spent every morning at their facility, fine-tuning sensor calibrations and adjusting mechanical parameters to optimize performance for their specific applications. Frank's employees were initially skeptical of the unfamiliar equipment, but their attitudes shifted quickly as they observed measurable improvements in alignment precision and production consistency. The results exceeded even my optimistic expectations. During the 30-day trial period, Frank's alignment critical production line experienced 0 quality control rejections, compared to an average of 3 to 4 rejected batches monthly. With their previous system, production speed increased by 18% due to reduced setup time and eliminated rework cycles. Most importantly, customer satisfaction improved noticeably, as Frank was able to deliver components with consistency levels that had been impossible to achieve with manual alignment processes. Frank's enthusiasm about the trial results provided the confidence boost I needed to approach other potential customers with concrete performance data rather than theoretical benefits. He agreed to serve as a reference customer and helped me develop case study materials that demonstrated real-world applications and measurable return on investment. The success at Pacific Precision Manufacturing opened doors that had been firmly closed during my earlier attempts to find customers willing to test unproven technology. Frank's testimonial carried weight with other small manufacturers who trusted his judgment about production efficiency solutions, and his willingness to provide detailed performance data gave me credible evidence that my system delivered measurable benefits rather than theoretical improvements. Within 6 weeks of completing the successful trial, I had signed contracts with 3 additional companies: Riverside Components, a family-owned business that manufactured parts for agricultural equipment; Precision Plastics, a small injection molding operation that supplied automotive suppliers; and Mesa Manufacturing, a machine shop that produced custom components for aerospace applications. Each installation presented unique technical challenges that required modifications to my basic alignment system design. Riverside Components needed sensors that could function reliably in dusty conditions common to agricultural manufacturing environments. Precision Plastics required integration with high-temperature injection molding processes that exceeded the operating ranges of standard electronic components. Mesa manufacturing demanded precision levels that pushed the limits of my sensor accuracy and mechanical tolerances. These customization requirements forced rapid evolution of my technology from a single prototype to a modular system that could be adapted for diverse manufacturing applications. I spent 16-hour days developing specialized sensor housings, high-temperature electronics, and precision calibration procedures that would eventually become key differentiators when larger companies began evaluating my technology. The financial transformation was gradual but significant. Installation and service contracts with 4 small manufacturers provided approximately $8,000 monthly in revenue, enough to cover living expenses while reinvesting in workshop improvements and technology development. For the first time since leaving Northrop Grumman, I could afford to purchase proper engineering software, precision measurement equipment, and quality components rather than relying on surplus materials and improvised solutions. However, my family's perception of my career trajectory remained unchanged despite this measurable progress. During Sunday dinners, Miguel would acknowledge my income improvements, but question the sustainability of depending on small companies that might fail or change suppliers without warning. "Your cousin Roberto gets paid the same amount every 2 weeks," he would observe while passing homemade tortillas. "He doesn't have to worry about customers changing their minds or finding someone cheaper." Carmen's concerns focused on the social implications of my unconventional career path. During phone conversations with her sisters, I could hear her struggling to explain my work in terms that made sense within their shared framework of traditional employment. "She works with machines," Carmen would say, her voice carrying uncertainty about whether this description accurately captured what I actually did. "She's very smart, and the companies pay her well, but it's not like having a real job with benefits and security." The most challenging family conversation occurred during Christmas dinner, when extended relatives gathered for our traditional celebration. Uncle Carlos had brought his new girlfriend, a nurse practitioner named Angela, who asked polite questions about everyone's careers. When Carmen introduced me as an engineer who works with manufacturing companies, Angela naturally assumed I was employed by one of these companies and asked which one. The subsequent explanation that I was actually an independent inventor who had developed technology that I installed and maintained for multiple clients created visible confusion around the dinner table. Relatives exchanged glances that suggested they weren't entirely sure whether my work arrangements represented success or an elaborate way of avoiding traditional employment. Aunt Sophia, emboldened by wine and genuine concern, asked the question that everyone was thinking but hadn't voiced directly. "So basically, you're a contractor without benefits or job security, depending on small companies that might not need your services next year, when you could be working for Raytheon or Boeing with guaranteed salary and retirement plans." Isabella attempted to defend my choices by explaining the innovative nature of my technology and its potential for growth. But her support highlighted, rather than resolved, the fundamental disconnect between my family's understanding of career success and the reality of independent innovation. Their framework for evaluating professional achievement simply didn't include categories for the type of work I was pursuing. The emotional toll of constant family skepticism was compounded by the isolation inherent in independent technical work. Most days, I worked alone in Dorothy's garage or at customer facilities where I was viewed as an outside consultant rather than a colleague. Evenings were spent reviewing technical documentation, planning installations, or developing improvements to my system based on field experience. My social life had contracted to occasional dinners with Isabella and irregular phone calls with former Northrop Grumman colleagues who remained politely interested in my activities, but clearly viewed my career path as an interesting experiment rather than a sustainable long-term strategy. The loneliness was particularly acute during weekend evenings when married friends posted social media photos of family gatherings and dinner parties that felt impossibly distant from my reality of workshop sessions and technical documentation. Dorothy continued to provide emotional support and practical wisdom during our evening conversations, but her encouragement came with growing awareness of the personal costs associated with pursuing innovation outside traditional institutional frameworks. "You're building something important," she would say while reviewing my latest technical drawings. "But don't forget that success isn't just about solving technical problems. You need people around you who understand what you're trying to accomplish." Her observation prompted me to seek connections with other independent inventors and small business owners who might share similar experiences with family skepticism and social isolation. I began attending monthly meetings of the Inland Empire Inventors Association, a group that met at the Corona Public Library to discuss patents, product development, and strategies for commercializing innovative technologies. The group consisted primarily of retired engineers and amateur inventors working on projects ranging from kitchen gadgets to automotive accessories. Most members had experienced some version of family pressure to abandon their inventive activities in favor of more conventional pursuits, and their shared stories provided perspective on the emotional challenges I was facing. George Patterson, a retired aerospace engineer who had developed several successful automotive innovations, became an informal mentor during this period. He had spent 15 years developing fuel injection improvements, while his family questioned his use of retirement time and resources on garage projects. Eventually, his innovations were licensed by major automotive suppliers, generating royalties that exceeded his pension income. The key insight George shared was that family skepticism often reflected genuine concern rather than lack of faith in your abilities. "They want you to be secure and happy," he explained during one of our coffee conversations after inventors' meetings. "They just can't see how unconventional paths might lead to those outcomes, because they haven't experienced anything like what you're attempting." This perspective helped me reframe family pressure as misguided love rather than deliberate sabotage, reducing my emotional reactivity to their concerns while maintaining focus on technical and business development. Instead of becoming defensive during family gatherings, I began acknowledging their concerns while briefly describing progress without expecting them to understand or approve. The strategy proved effective during Easter dinner, when Miguel asked his standard question about when I might consider returning to traditional employment. Rather than arguing about the viability of independent innovation, I simply acknowledged that I understood his concerns about job security while mentioning that my customer base had grown to 6 companies and my income had increased substantially. Miguel nodded thoughtfully, apparently satisfied that I had heard his concerns, and shifted the conversation to Isabella's upcoming graduation from Cal Poly Pomona. The interaction felt less confrontational than previous discussions, though I remained aware that fundamental disagreement about my career choices hadn't been resolved. This period of gradual business growth and evolving family dynamics established patterns that would continue throughout the following months, as I worked to expand my customer base and develop technology improvements that would eventually attract attention from larger manufacturers. The foundation of credible performance data and satisfied customers provided confidence to pursue more ambitious opportunities, while family relationships slowly adapted to the reality that my unconventional career path was generating measurable success rather than predictable failure. By late spring, my automated alignment system had evolved from a promising prototype to a proven manufacturing solution with documented performance benefits across multiple industries. Word-of-mouth referrals from satisfied customers led to inquiries from increasingly sophisticated companies that required more advanced technical capabilities and formal documentation standards that reflected professional engineering practices rather than garage innovation. The transition from serving small family-owned manufacturers to competing for contracts with larger regional companies required significant upgrades to my business infrastructure and technical offerings. Potential customers expected comprehensive technical specifications, performance warranties, installation timelines, and ongoing support commitments that demanded resources far beyond my existing workshop capabilities. I leased professional office space in a small industrial complex in Corona, splitting my time between administrative work in the office and continued prototype development in Dorothy's garage. The office provided a professional address for customer correspondence, space for business meetings, and storage for the technical documentation and spare parts inventory that supported my growing customer base. Hiring my first employee marked a crucial transition from individual innovator to small business owner with responsibilities that extended beyond my personal financial survival. James Rodriguez, a recent mechanical engineering graduate from UC Riverside, joined my company initially as a part-time installation technician, but quickly demonstrated technical skills and customer service abilities that warranted expansion to full-time status. James brought fresh perspectives on manufacturing technology trends and helped develop standardized installation procedures that reduced the time required for each customer deployment while improving system reliability and performance consistency. His presence also provided backup technical support when multiple customers required simultaneous attention, allowing me to pursue new business opportunities without neglecting existing commitments. The financial implications of business expansion were simultaneously encouraging and terrifying. Monthly revenue had grown to approximately $15,000, providing sustainable income for 2 employees while generating surplus cash for continued technology development and business infrastructure improvements. However, the fixed costs associated with office lease, employee salary, insurance, and professional equipment created financial obligations that required consistent customer acquisition and retention. For the first time since leaving Northrop Grumman, I experienced the weight of responsibility for someone else's financial security. James depended on his salary to cover student loan payments and living expenses, and the pressure to maintain sufficient revenue to support his employment added urgency to business development efforts that had previously affected only my personal circumstances. Family reactions to my transition from individual inventor to small business owner were mixed, reflecting continuing uncertainty about whether my career trajectory represented genuine success or elaborate avoidance of traditional employment stability. Miguel acknowledged the positive aspects of having employees and professional office space, but remained concerned about the financial risks associated with business ownership compared to the guaranteed salary and benefits of corporate employment. During our monthly family dinners, he would ask detailed questions about my business finances with the systematic approach he used for evaluating major household purchases. How much does the office cost each month? What happens if customers stop needing your services? Do you have health insurance that covers everything? His questions reflected genuine concern, but also highlighted his fundamental discomfort with the uncertainty inherent in entrepreneurial ventures. Carmen's responses were more emotionally complex, combining pride in my achievements with persistent anxiety about my departure from conventional career expectations. She enjoyed describing my business success to friends and neighbors, particularly when emphasizing the professional office and employee status that seemed to validate her investment in my education. However, private conversations revealed ongoing concern about my long-term financial security and marriage prospects. The marriage question had become increasingly prominent in family discussions as I approached my 30th birthday, while remaining focused on business development rather than romantic relationships. Carmen's subtle and sometimes direct suggestions that I should prioritize finding a husband reflected cultural expectations about women's life priorities that conflicted with my total commitment to building a successful technology company. "Your cousin Patricia is getting married next month," Carmen would mention during phone calls, her voice carrying implications that extended far beyond sharing family news. "She met her fiancé at work, and he has an excellent job with the county. They're buying a house together, something stable they can build their future around." The subtext was clear. Successful women found husbands who provided additional financial security rather than pursuing business ventures that consumed all available time and energy. Isabella understood my priorities better than our parents, but occasionally expressed concern about the social isolation that accompanied my intense focus on business development. During her weekend visits to my office, she would observe my 12-hour workdays and minimal social interactions with anyone other than customers and suppliers. "You're building something amazing," she would say while reviewing my latest technical documentation. But when was the last time you went to dinner with friends or took a weekend off just to relax? I worried that her questions reflected family pressure rather than personal concern, but recognized that my social life had contracted dramatically as business responsibilities expanded. The most significant challenge during this period came from an unexpected source: a larger competitor that viewed my growing customer base as a threat to their market position in Southern California manufacturing markets. Precision Automation Systems, a well-established company based in Orange County, had provided alignment equipment and services to regional manufacturers for over 20 years. When several of their long-term customers began inquiring about my technology as an alternative to their existing systems, Precision Automation's sales representatives responded with aggressive tactics designed to discredit my company and technology. They questioned my qualifications, highlighted the risks of depending on a small startup for critical manufacturing support, and offered substantial discounts to customers who renewed contracts rather than switching to untested alternatives. The competitive pressure was particularly intense with two prospective customers who had expressed serious interest in my system, but were reconsidering after conversations with Precision Automation representatives. Both companies valued the potential benefits of my technology, but were concerned about the business continuity risks associated with depending on a small company for ongoing support and system maintenance. Frank Morales at Pacific Precision Manufacturing warned me about Precision Automation's tactics after their sales representative visited his facility to discuss contract renewal options. "They're telling people that your company might not be around next year," Frank explained during our monthly maintenance visit. "They're offering discounts and extended service contracts to customers who sign long-term agreements instead of switching to your system." The realization that my success was threatening established competitors marked a crucial transition in my understanding of business competition and the challenges associated with disrupting existing market relationships. Previously, I had focused primarily on technical performance and customer satisfaction, assuming that superior technology would naturally lead to market acceptance. Precision Automation's response demonstrated that established companies would actively defend their market positions using business relationships, financial resources, and customer concerns about innovation risks that extended beyond pure technical performance comparisons. Competing effectively would require not just better technology, but also stronger business credentials, financial stability demonstrations, and comprehensive customer support capabilities. James and I spent several weeks developing responses to the competitive challenges, including expanded service guarantees, customer references from successful installations, and detailed documentation of our technology's performance advantages compared to existing alternatives. We also established relationships with equipment financing companies that could help customers manage the initial investment costs while spreading payments over multiple years. The competitive pressure accelerated rather than hindered my business development efforts, forcing rapid improvements in professional presentation, customer service standards, and strategic planning that positioned my company for more ambitious growth opportunities. By summer, we had successfully retained existing customers while adding 3 new contracts despite Precision Automation's aggressive defensive tactics. However, the stress of competitive pressure combined with family skepticism and social isolation was beginning to affect my emotional well-being in ways that concerned both Isabella and Dorothy. During our evening workshop conversations, Dorothy observed that I seemed more anxious and less confident than during earlier stages of technology development, when financial pressure was actually more severe. "Success brings different challenges than failure," she noted while reviewing my latest customer contracts. "When you were just trying to prove your technology worked, you only had to worry about technical problems. Now that you're succeeding, you have to worry about competitors, employees, customer expectations, and family pressure all at the same time." Her observation highlighted the irony that business success had increased rather than decreased the complexity of challenges I faced on a daily basis. The garage inventor working alone with minimal income had fewer responsibilities and external pressures than the small business owner with employees, customers, competitors, and family expectations to manage simultaneously. The autumn months brought a level of business success that exceeded my most optimistic projections from the early days of garage experimentation. My customer base had expanded to 12 manufacturing companies across Southern California, ranging from Frank's small precision machining operation to mid-size automotive suppliers that employed over 100 workers. Monthly revenue had reached $28,000, allowing me to hire a second technician and invest in advanced development equipment that would support the next generation of alignment technology. However, this period of rapid growth also intensified the fundamental tensions between my professional achievements and family expectations in ways that created emotional stress far beyond the technical and business challenges I had learned to navigate successfully. The disconnect between external success and internal family support reached a breaking point that would ultimately lead to the confrontation that changed everything. The first indication of escalating family pressure came during Miguel's birthday celebration in October, when relatives who hadn't seen me in several months commented on my appearance and demeanor with concern that seemed disproportionate to my actual circumstances. Aunt Sophia noted that I looked tired and stressed, suggesting that business ownership was taking a toll on my health and well-being that wasn't sustainable long-term. Uncle Carlos was more direct in his assessment of my situation. "You're working too hard for something that could disappear overnight," he said while we stood around the backyard grill, watching him prepare carne asada for the family gathering. "What happens if your customers find someone cheaper, or the economy gets bad and companies stop buying your equipment? You don't have the security that comes with working for an established corporation." These observations reflected genuine concern, but also revealed the persistence of fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of my business and its growth trajectory. Family members continued to view my work as a risky experiment rather than a proven enterprise with established customers, documented performance history, and expanding market opportunities. Carmen's approach during this period became more emotionally manipulative, focusing on my personal life rather than business concerns. During private conversations, she would express worry about my isolation from potential romantic partners, and the biological reality that successful career women who delayed marriage often ended up alone and childless despite their professional achievements. I met Mrs. Rodriguez's son Eduardo at Mass last Sunday, she mentioned during one of our phone calls, her voice carrying the artificial casualness she used when delivering information that was actually carefully planned suggestions. He's an accountant with the city, very stable job with excellent benefits. He just bought a house in a nice neighborhood, and his mother says he's looking for a serious relationship with an educated woman who understands the importance of family. The subtext of these conversations was clear. I should prioritize finding a husband and starting a family while I was still young enough to have children, rather than continuing to invest all my time and energy in business development that might ultimately prove less fulfilling than traditional domestic roles. Carmen's concerns reflected cultural expectations that successful women should use their education and achievements to attract stable husbands rather than pursuing independent careers that competed with family obligations. Isabella attempted to mediate between my parents' concerns and my business priorities, but her position as the unmarried daughter pursuing graduate education limited her credibility as an advisor on life balance issues. During her weekend visits to my office, she would gently suggest that I consider delegating more responsibilities to James and the new technician so that I could maintain some personal life outside of work commitments. "You've proven that your technology works and your business is successful," she would say, while reviewing my packed schedule of customer meetings and development projects. "Maybe it's time to think about what kind of life you want beyond just building the company." Her suggestions were reasonable and well-intentioned, but implementing them would require trusting employees with responsibilities that I felt needed my direct oversight to maintain quality standards and customer satisfaction. The pressure reached a critical point during Thanksgiving dinner, when the traditional family gathering became an informal intervention focused on my work-life balance and future planning. Extended relatives who had previously questioned my decision to leave aerospace engineering now acknowledged my business success, but expressed concern about the personal costs associated with entrepreneurial intensity. Dorothy had warned me about this dynamic during one of our evening conversations the week before Thanksgiving. "Success doesn't eliminate family pressure," she observed while reviewing my latest technical drawings. "It just changes the focus from whether you can succeed to whether success is worth the sacrifices you're making. They want you to be happy, but their definition of happiness might not match yours." Her prediction proved accurate during the Thanksgiving gathering, when conversation repeatedly returned to questions about my personal happiness despite professional achievements. Relatives took turns expressing variations of the same concern. I had built a successful business but seemed isolated, stressed, and focused on work to the exclusion of personal relationships and life experiences that would ultimately prove more important than professional accomplishments. The most challenging conversation came from my godmother, Teresa, who had watched me grow up and felt entitled to offer frank advice about life priorities. "Mia," she said while we cleaned dishes together, "after dinner, I'm proud of what you've accomplished with your business, but you're missing the most important parts of life. When you're 50 years old, you won't care about machines and customers. You'll care about having a family and people who love you for who you are, not what you've built." These conversations created cognitive dissonance between my satisfaction with professional progress and growing awareness that my intense focus on business development had indeed isolated me from personal relationships and life experiences that might prove important for long-term happiness. The family pressure forced reflection on whether my definition of success was complete, or whether I was avoiding personal commitments by hiding behind business responsibilities. The internal conflict was compounded by the realization that my business had reached a level of stability and success that no longer required the 16-hour workdays and total life commitment that had been necessary during earlier stages of development. James and the new technician were capable of handling routine installations and customer service, allowing me to focus on strategic planning and advanced technology development without micromanaging daily operations. However, reducing my work intensity felt emotionally risky after 2 years of total commitment to building something successful, despite family skepticism and external challenges. The business had become not just my career but my identity, and contemplating a more balanced approach to life felt like admitting that family concerns about my priorities might have some validity. December brought both the highest monthly revenue in my company's history and the lowest point in my relationship with my family. The financial success felt hollow against the backdrop of increasing pressure to justify my life choices to people whose approval I valued, despite our fundamental disagreements about career and personal priorities. The emotional toll was evident to Dorothy during our workshop conversations, when I would spend more time discussing family pressure than technical development. "You're letting their anxiety become your anxiety," she observed after listening to my latest account of family dinner conversations. "They love you and want you to be happy, but they can't see that you are happy because your happiness looks different from what they expected." Her words provided perspective, but didn't resolve the fundamental tension between my professional satisfaction and family expectations. As the year ended, I found myself questioning not just business strategies, but life priorities in ways that felt both necessary and potentially destructive to the focus that had enabled my success. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would force resolution of these tensions in ways that I couldn't anticipate, but that would ultimately validate not just my technology, but my choices about how to build a meaningful life around innovation and independent achievement. The new year arrived with a momentum that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. January brought 3 major contract signings that would triple my monthly revenue within 6 months, including a partnership with Western Automotive Components, a supplier to major car manufacturers that operated facilities across Arizona and Southern California. The contract represented validation that my technology had evolved beyond serving small regional manufacturers to competing successfully for enterprise-level customers with sophisticated technical requirements. However, the success that should have silenced family concerns instead amplified them in unexpected ways. My parents' anxiety shifted from questioning whether my business would survive to worrying about the personal costs of success that seemed to consume every aspect of my life. Carmen began expressing concern that I was becoming someone different from the daughter she had raised, more focused on achievements than relationships, more comfortable with machines than people. The complexity of managing larger contracts required hiring additional staff and implementing business systems that felt foreign after years of informal operations managed through personal relationships and handshake agreements. Sandra Martinez joined as my first administrative assistant, bringing organizational skills that transformed chaotic customer communications into systematic project management processes. Her presence allowed me to focus on technical development and strategic planning, rather than spending hours each day responding to emails and scheduling maintenance visits. Roberto Chen, an experienced manufacturing engineer who had recently left his position at a large aerospace contractor, became my technical development manager with responsibility for advancing our core technology beyond its current capabilities. His background in complex systems integration brought professional discipline to development projects that had previously relied on intuitive experimentation and trial-and-error refinement. The Western automotive contract demanded technological capabilities that pushed beyond anything I had previously developed. Their production requirements included integration with existing factory automation systems, real-time performance monitoring through networked sensors, and fail-safe mechanisms that would prevent costly production shutdowns if my equipment experienced technical problems. Meeting these specifications required 6 months of intensive development work that consumed weekends and evenings previously reserved for family obligations and personal activities. Isabella noticed the change during her increasingly infrequent visits to my office, observing that my workspace had transformed from an inventor's workshop into a corporate engineering department with technical staff, project timelines, and meeting schedules that left little time for the informal conversations we had enjoyed during earlier stages of my business development. "You're building something incredible," she said while reviewing our latest technical documentation. "But I miss being able to just talk with you about ideas and possibilities. Now everything feels like a business meeting, even when we're supposed to be spending time together as sisters." Her observation stung because it reflected a truth I had been avoiding. Success was changing not just my circumstances, but my personality in ways that might be isolating me from relationships that mattered more than professional achievements. The financial rewards of business growth were undeniable and substantial. My personal income had reached levels that exceeded anything I could have achieved in traditional aerospace employment, allowing me to purchase a house in a neighborhood that had seemed impossibly expensive during my Northrop Grumman days. The 3-bedroom home in Corona included a detached garage that I converted into a personal workshop for experimental projects that weren't appropriate for office development activities. Carmen's reaction to my house purchase revealed the complexity of her feelings about my success. She expressed pride in my ability to afford such a significant investment, while simultaneously worrying that homeownership would further anchor me to a lifestyle that prioritized professional achievement over family formation. During the housewarming party she insisted on organizing, she spent considerable effort introducing me to single male guests who might represent potential romantic partners if I could find time in my schedule for dating relationships. The social event felt surreal as relatives and family friends toured my home, examining the modern kitchen and spacious living areas while asking polite questions about my business that revealed their continued uncertainty about what exactly I did for work. Most conversations followed similar patterns: expressions of admiration for my obvious success, followed by subtle inquiries about my personal life and future plans for marriage and children. Miguel's assessment of my situation during the housewarming party was characteristically direct and focused on practical concerns that reflected his blue-collar perspective on financial security. "This is a beautiful house, mija," he said while examining the hardwood floors and granite countertops. "But can you afford the mortgage payments if your business has problems? What's your backup plan if customers stop needing your services or the economy changes?" His questions weren't unreasonable, but they highlighted the persistent gap between my confidence in the business's stability and his anxiety about the risks associated with entrepreneurial income compared to traditional employment security. For Miguel, success meant eliminating financial uncertainty, not achieving high income that might prove temporary if business conditions changed unexpectedly. The most significant development during this period was the beginning of patent application processes for 3 major improvements to my core alignment technology that Roberto and I had developed while working on the Western Automotive contract specifications. The innovations addressed fundamental limitations in existing manufacturing automation systems and represented potential licensing opportunities that could generate revenue streams independent of direct customer installations. Filing patent applications required working with intellectual property attorneys who specialized in manufacturing technology, a process that consumed weeks of detailed technical documentation and legal reviews that felt both exciting and intimidating. The lawyers explained that successful patents could provide competitive advantages for years while generating licensing income from companies that preferred purchasing proven technologies rather than developing competing solutions internally. However, the patent process also created new categories of business risk and complexity that required strategic decisions about technology disclosure, competitive positioning, and potential licensing partnerships with companies that might become competitors or customers depending on market developments. Roberto's experience with corporate intellectual property management proved invaluable for navigating these decisions while maintaining focus on current customer commitments. The intersection of patent development and family relationships created unexpected tensions when Carmen began describing my work to neighbors and church friends as inventing machines that would make me rich and famous. Her enthusiasm about potential financial rewards reflected pride in my achievements, but also revealed misunderstanding about the uncertain nature of patent commercialization and the years of additional work required to translate intellectual property into actual income. Dorothy continued providing emotional support and practical wisdom during evening conversations in my personal workshop, but her observations increasingly focused on the stress and isolation that accompanied business growth rather than the technical challenges that had dominated our earlier discussions. "You're succeeding beyond anything we imagined when you started working in my garage," she noted while reviewing my latest patent documentation. "But success is requiring sacrifices that might not be sustainable indefinitely." Her concern was well-founded. The combination of demanding customer contracts, patent development work, staff management responsibilities, and family pressure about personal life choices was creating stress levels that affected my sleep, appetite, and general well-being in ways that Isabella and Dorothy noticed, but that I was reluctant to acknowledge directly. The emotional toll became evident during a particularly challenging week in March when Western Automotive requested accelerated delivery timelines that would require working through a weekend when I had planned to attend my cousin Patricia's wedding. The choice between fulfilling customer commitments and maintaining family relationships felt like an impossible decision that highlighted the real costs of business success. Carmen's reaction to my absence from Patricia's wedding marked a turning point in our relationship that would have lasting implications for the family dynamics surrounding my career choices. Her disappointment transcended the specific event to encompass broader concerns about my priorities and the person I was becoming. Through total commitment to professional achievement at the expense of family obligations, "Some things are more important than business," she said during our phone conversation after the wedding, her voice carrying hurt that extended beyond missed celebration to deeper questions about my values and character. "Your cousin wanted you there to share her happiness, and you chose work instead. What's the point of success if it means abandoning the people who love you?" The conversation forced recognition that my definition of success might be incomplete if it required sacrificing relationships and life experiences that could prove more important than professional achievements in the long term. However, reducing my business intensity felt risky after investing years in building something that finally provided financial security and professional recognition that my family had originally wanted for me. Spring brought the kind of business momentum that startup founders dream about but rarely experience. Multiple major contracts expanding simultaneously, technology innovations gaining industry recognition, and financial performance that exceeded all previous projections. Yet this period of unprecedented success also triggered the most intense family pressure I had experienced since leaving Northrop Grumman, as relatives who had initially questioned my career choices now worried about the personal costs of achievements that seemed to consume my entire existence. The catalyst for escalating family concern was my decision to skip Easter Sunday dinner in favor of attending the National Manufacturing Technology Conference in Detroit, where I had been invited to present a keynote speech about automation innovations in precision manufacturing. The speaking opportunity represented significant industry recognition and potential business development. But my absence from the most important family gathering of the year created hurt feelings that resonated throughout our extended family network. Carmen's reaction to my travel plans revealed the depth of her frustration with my priorities and the accumulating disappointments from missed family events that she had been tolerating with increasing difficulty. "This is the third major family gathering you've missed this year," she said during our phone conversation about Easter plans, her voice carrying emotional weight that extended beyond the immediate scheduling conflict. "Your grandmother Esperanza specifically asked if you would be there because she wants to hear about your business success," Carmen continued. "And now I have to explain that work is more important to you than spending time with family who love and support you." What kind of person becomes too busy for Easter dinner with their own grandmother? The guilt was overwhelming, because Carmen's concerns weren't unreasonable or manipulative. I had indeed missed multiple family gatherings due to business commitments, and my grandmother's age made every opportunity to spend time with her potentially precious and irreplaceable. However, the speaking opportunity in Detroit could lead to partnerships and contracts that would secure my company's future while establishing my reputation as a recognized expert in manufacturing technology. Isabella attempted to mediate the conflict by offering to attend the conference with me and help present our business accomplishments to the family upon my return. But her suggestion highlighted, rather than resolved, the fundamental tension between professional obligations and personal relationships that had been building throughout months of business growth. "You're making the right choice for your career," Isabella assured me while driving to the airport. "But I understand why Mom and Dad are worried about what success is costing you personally." "When was the last time you took a vacation that wasn't related to business, or went to dinner with friends who aren't customers or suppliers?" Her questions forced recognition that my social life had contracted to business relationships and family obligations, with minimal time devoted to friendships, hobbies, or activities that weren't directly related to company development. The isolation was partly intentional, reflecting my belief that building a successful technology company required total commitment during crucial growth phases. But Isabella's observations suggested that this intensity might not be sustainable indefinitely. The Detroit conference exceeded my expectations for business development and industry networking, resulting in preliminary discussions with 3 major automotive manufacturers about potential licensing agreements for my patent-pending innovations. The response to my keynote presentation was overwhelmingly positive, with several attendees describing my technology as revolutionary for addressing chronic efficiency problems that had plagued automated manufacturing for decades. However, the professional validation felt hollow against the backdrop of family hurt that I discovered upon returning home. Miguel had called my office twice during my absence, leaving messages that expressed concern about my grandmother's health and disappointment that business travel had prevented me from spending time with family members who might not have many more opportunities for such gatherings. The emotional complexity was exhausting because I genuinely loved my family and appreciated their support throughout my entrepreneurial journey. But their expectations about my availability for family events felt incompatible with the business commitments required for continued growth and success. The speaking opportunities, customer meetings, and development projects that drove company progress often conflicted with family schedules that had been planned months in advance. Carmen's solution to this dilemma was characteristically direct and reflected her growing concern about my isolation from potential romantic relationships. She arranged a dinner introduction with Eduardo Santos, the city accountant she had mentioned previously, scheduling the meeting for a weekend when I had no business travel planned and couldn't reasonably claim scheduling conflicts. The dinner, at a restaurant in downtown Riverside, was pleasantly awkward, with Eduardo proving to be intelligent, professionally accomplished, and genuinely interested in my business achievements. He asked thoughtful questions about manufacturing technology and expressed admiration for my entrepreneurial success while describing his own career satisfaction with municipal government work that provided excellent benefits and predictable advancement opportunities. However, our conversation highlighted fundamental differences in life priorities and professional aspirations that made romantic compatibility unlikely, despite Eduardo's obvious qualities as a potential partner. His satisfaction with stable employment and interest in starting a family within the next few years contrasted sharply with my total commitment to business growth and uncertain timeline for personal relationship development. Carmen's post-dinner analysis focused entirely on Eduardo's positive qualities and potential as a marriage partner, with minimal consideration of compatibility issues that seemed obvious to me but apparently invisible to her. He's handsome, stable, educated, and interested in family, she observed during our phone conversation the following day. What more could you want in a husband? You're not getting younger, mija, and men like Eduardo don't stay single forever. The pressure about marriage and children intensified during the following weeks as Carmen began mentioning Eduardo regularly and suggesting additional social opportunities where we might spend time together. Her matchmaking efforts reflected genuine concern about my long-term happiness, but also created additional stress that competed with business responsibilities for my emotional energy and attention. The situation reached a breaking point during a family barbecue in May, when multiple relatives began offering unsolicited advice about work-life balance and the importance of prioritizing personal relationships before it became too late to start a family. Aunt Sophia was particularly direct in her assessment of my situation, expressing concern that business success was preventing me from experiencing the personal fulfillment that ultimately mattered more than professional achievements. You're building an impressive company, she said while we stood near the pool watching cousins play with their children. But when you're 60 years old, you won't care about machines and contracts. You'll care about having a husband who loves you and children who make life meaningful. Success means nothing if you're alone. The conversation stung because it reflected fears I had been suppressing about the potential costs of total career commitment. Watching my married cousins interact with their spouses and children did trigger questions about whether I was missing important life experiences while pursuing professional goals that might ultimately prove less fulfilling than personal. Relationships and family formation. Uncle Carlos approached the topic from a different angle, focusing on financial security and the risks associated with business ownership compared to traditional employment benefits. Your company is doing well now, he observed while flipping hamburgers on the grill. But what happens when you're older and need health insurance or retirement income? Corporate jobs provide security that independent businesses can't guarantee. These family conversations created cognitive dissonance between my satisfaction with business achievements and growing awareness that my lifestyle choices were indeed isolating me from experiences and relationships that many people considered essential for happiness and personal fulfillment. The pressure forced uncomfortable reflection on whether my definition of success was complete or whether I was avoiding personal commitments by hiding behind business responsibilities. Roberto and Sandra noticed the stress during team meetings where I seemed distracted by concerns that weren't directly related to technical development or customer service issues. Roberto, who had experienced similar family pressure during his own career transitions, offered perspective that helped contextualize the emotional challenges I was facing. Family pressure about personal life is normal when you're succeeding professionally, he explained during one of our development planning sessions. They want you to be happy, but their definition of happiness might not match yours. The key is maintaining focus on your goals while acknowledging their concerns without letting family anxiety become your anxiety. His advice was practical, but didn't resolve the fundamental tension between professional ambitions and family expectations that seemed to intensify rather than diminish as my business success became more obvious and substantial. The upcoming summer months would bring additional challenges as wedding season created multiple opportunities for family gatherings, where my single status and work-focused lifestyle would be subject to continued scrutiny and well-intentioned but stressful advice. Summer arrived with a cascade of business opportunities that would have been thrilling under different circumstances, but felt overwhelming against the backdrop of escalating family pressure and personal exhaustion that had been building throughout months of intensive growth management. 3 major manufacturers had submitted formal requests for proposals that could potentially double my company's revenue within 18 months. But pursuing these opportunities would require expansion into markets and technical capabilities that demanded even greater time commitment and business travel. The most significant opportunity came from Genesis Electric Vehicle Manufacturing, a startup based in Austin that was developing commercial delivery trucks for the rapidly expanding electric vehicle market. Their production requirements included automated battery assembly systems that incorporated my alignment technology with additional capabilities for handling the extreme precision demands of electric vehicle manufacturing. The potential contract value exceeded $2 million over 3 years, representing the kind of transformational business development that could establish my company as a major player in automotive automation. However, the Genesis opportunity required immediate attention during the same period when Isabella was defending her doctoral dissertation and my grandmother Esperanza was scheduled for medical tests that the family considered potentially serious, given her age and recent health concerns. The timing conflict created an impossible choice between potentially life-changing business development and family obligations that couldn't be rescheduled or delegated to other relatives. Carmen's reaction to my travel plans for the Genesis presentation meetings was more emotional than any previous conflict about business priorities. She accused me of using work as an excuse to avoid family responsibilities and suggested that my business success was changing my character in ways that she found deeply concerning. The conversation occurred during what was supposed to be a casual lunch, but became a confrontation that revealed months of accumulated hurt and disappointment. "You're becoming someone I don't recognize," Carmen said across the table at our favorite Mexican restaurant, her voice carrying pain that extended beyond the immediate scheduling conflict. "The daughter I raised would never miss her sister's dissertation defense to chase more money and more contracts. When did success become more important to you than the people who love you?" The accusation hurt because it contained elements of truth that I had been avoiding acknowledging. My business had indeed become the primary organizing principle of my life, with family relationships, personal health, and social activities relegated to secondary priorities that received attention only when business demands allowed. The intensity had felt necessary during the crucial growth phases, but Carmen's perspective suggested that I might be losing sight of values and relationships that ultimately mattered more than professional achievements. Miguel's approach to expressing concern was characteristically practical, focusing on the long-term sustainability of my current lifestyle rather than immediate family conflicts. During a rare private conversation when he visited my office to see the expanded operations, he observed that I looked exhausted and stressed in ways that reminded him of coworkers who had experienced health problems from workplace pressure. "Success should make life better, not harder," he said while examining the technical equipment and project documentation that filled my workspace. "You're working more hours now than when you were struggling to find customers, and you seem less happy despite having more money and recognition." What's the point of building something successful if it makes you miserable? His observation was uncomfortably accurate. The business success that should have provided satisfaction and security instead created pressure to maintain growth rates and pursue increasingly complex opportunities that consumed every available hour while generating stress levels that affected my sleep, appetite, and general well-being in ways that even Roberto and Sandra had begun to notice during daily interactions. The dissertation defense scheduling conflict forced a decision that would have lasting implications for my relationship with Isabella and my understanding of the real costs associated with total career commitment. After extensive consideration and consultation with my business attorney about the Genesis opportunity timeline, I chose to attend Isabella's defense and postpone the Austin meetings until the following week. The decision felt like a victory for family priorities over business obligations, but the Genesis representative's reaction to the scheduling delay revealed potential costs that extended beyond personal convenience. Their project timeline was aggressive, and my inability to provide immediate attention suggested that my company might not have the availability and responsiveness required for their demanding development schedule. Isabella's dissertation defense was a triumph that reminded me why family support mattered more than any business achievement. Watching her present years of research on behavioral economics applications to consumer decision-making while fielding questions from faculty members with expertise in her field, I felt pride that had nothing to do with financial performance or industry recognition, but everything to do with witnessing someone I loved succeed in pursuing her intellectual passions. The celebration dinner afterward included extended family members who had traveled to support Isabella's academic achievement, creating the kind of multi-generational gathering that had become rare in my schedule, but that reminded me of the emotional foundation that family relationships provided during both success and failure. Grandmother Esperanza's presence was particularly meaningful, given her recent health concerns and her pride in having two granddaughters who had achieved educational and professional success that exceeded anything previous generations had imagined possible. However, the family celebration was shadowed by my awareness that the Genesis opportunity might be compromised by my scheduling decisions and by growing recognition that the intensity required for continued business growth was indeed incompatible with maintaining meaningful family relationships and personal well-being. The cognitive dissonance between family satisfaction and professional anxiety highlighted the fundamental tension that had been building throughout months of trying to balance competing priorities. The following week's meetings in Austin confirmed my fears about the consequences of delayed responsiveness to major business opportunities. Genesis had initiated conversations with two competing automation companies during the week I was unavailable, and their enthusiasm for my technology was tempered by concerns about my company's capacity to provide the dedicated attention their project would require. Although I ultimately secured a modified version of the Genesis contract, the experience demonstrated that business opportunities at the highest levels required total availability and commitment that might be incompatible with maintaining family relationships and personal life balance. The realization forced uncomfortable questions about whether continued growth was worth the personal costs, or whether I should consider scaling back expansion plans to preserve relationships and well-being. Roberto's assessment of the Genesis situation was characteristically analytical and focused on strategic implications rather than personal concerns. The contract modification reduced potential revenue by approximately 30%, while extending development timelines in ways that could affect our ability to pursue other opportunities during the same period. From a business perspective, the family obligations had cost significant money and market positioning that might prove difficult to recover. Yet Isabella's perspective on the same situation was entirely different and ultimately more compelling. "You made the right choice," she assured me during one of our evening conversations at my house. "Business opportunities will always exist, but family moments like my defense happen once in a lifetime. The fact that you chose to be there meant more to me than any amount of money or business success could ever mean." Her words provided emotional validation for prioritizing family relationships over business optimization, but didn't resolve the underlying tension between professional ambitions and personal commitments that seemed to intensify rather than diminish. As my company achieved greater success and industry recognition, the approaching autumn would bring additional challenges as my parents' concern about my lifestyle reached levels that would ultimately trigger the intervention that changed everything. The late summer months brought a level of business success that should have provided satisfaction and validation after years of building my company from garage experiments to industry recognition. Monthly revenue had stabilized above $40,000. My technology patents were progressing through approval processes that could generate substantial licensing income, and major manufacturers were actively seeking partnerships that could establish my company as a dominant force in automation technology markets. Yet this period of unprecedented professional achievement coincided with the most intense family pressure I had experienced since leaving aerospace engineering, as relatives who had initially questioned my career choices now worried that success was consuming my life in ways that prevented personal happiness and relationship formation. The irony was painful. I had finally achieved the financial security and professional recognition that my family had originally wanted for me, but my total commitment to maintaining this success was creating concerns about my character and life priorities. The situation reached a critical point during my cousin Patricia's baby shower in August, where my role as the successful but single career woman became a topic of extended family discussion that revealed deep-seated concerns about my lifestyle, choices, and future planning. Multiple relatives took turns expressing variations of the same observation. I had built an impressive business, but seemed isolated from the personal relationships and life experiences that ultimately provided meaning and fulfillment. Aunt Sophia was particularly direct in her assessment during a private conversation near the gift table. "Maria, you've accomplished more professionally than any woman in our family," she said while arranging baby presents. "But when Patricia is changing diapers at 3 a.m. with her husband beside her, she'll be experiencing something that no amount of business success can replace. Are you prepared to miss that opportunity forever?" The comment stung because it highlighted a truth I had been avoiding. My total focus on business development had indeed prevented me from pursuing romantic relationships that could lead to marriage and family formation. At 31, I was approaching an age where biological realities would increasingly limit my options for having children. Yet my schedule and priorities left minimal time for dating, much less developing the kind of serious relationship that could result in long-term partnership. Carmen's reaction to the baby shower conversations marked a turning point in her approach to expressing concern about my personal life. Instead of subtle suggestions about potential romantic partners, she began making direct statements about my need to prioritize finding a husband and starting a family before it became too late to achieve these traditional markers of women's success and happiness. "Your career is impressive, mija," she said during our drive home from the baby shower. "But careers don't provide the love and companionship that make life worth living. Eduardo is still interested in seeing you again, and he represents exactly the kind of stability and partnership that could give you a complete life instead of just professional achievements." The pressure about Eduardo intensified during the following weeks, as Carmen began arranging social opportunities where we would encounter each other at family friends gatherings or church events. Her matchmaking efforts reflected genuine concern about my long-term happiness, but created additional stress that competed with business responsibilities for my emotional energy and decision-making capacity. The most challenging aspect of this period was recognizing that my family's concerns weren't entirely unreasonable or motivated by misunderstanding about my business success. I had indeed become someone who prioritized professional commitments over personal relationships, who measured achievement primarily through financial metrics and industry recognition, and who had minimal experience with the emotional intimacy and companionship that characterized healthy romantic partnerships. Dorothy's observations during our evening workshop conversations became increasingly focused on the personal costs of business intensity, rather than technical development challenges. "You're succeeding beyond anything we imagined when you started in my garage," she noted while reviewing my latest patent documentation. but success is requiring sacrifices that might not be sustainable or ultimately satisfying. What's the point of building something impressive if it prevents you from experiencing the personal connections that make life meaningful? Her questions forced uncomfortable reflection on whether my definition of success was complete, or whether I was using business achievements to avoid the vulnerability and emotional risks associated with serious romantic relationships. The possibility that I might be hiding behind professional accomplishments rather than genuinely prioritizing career development was disturbing and difficult to evaluate objectively. Roberto's perspective on work-life balance issues was influenced by his own experience with career transitions and family formation. He had left corporate aerospace employment partially to spend more time with his wife and young children, accepting lower immediate income in exchange for flexibility that allowed him to maintain meaningful family relationships while pursuing professional growth. Business success means nothing if it costs you the relationships that provide emotional support and personal fulfillment, he explained during one of our development planning meetings. I've worked with engineers who achieved incredible professional recognition, but ended up isolated and unhappy because they never learned how to build personal connections that weren't related to work accomplishments. His advice resonated because it came from someone who understood both the technical challenges of our industry and the personal costs associated with total career commitment. However, implementing his suggestions would require reducing my business intensity and accepting slower growth rates in exchange for time and emotional energy that could be devoted to personal relationship development. The approaching autumn brought additional pressure as my parents began expressing concern about my grandmother Esperanza's health and the importance of spending quality time with family members whose age made every gathering potentially precious and irreplaceable. Their observations about family priorities were reasonable and well-intentioned, but they coincided with crucial business development opportunities that required immediate attention and couldn't be delayed without potentially significant financial consequences. The tension reached a breaking point during September when I missed my grandmother's birthday celebration to attend a manufacturing conference in Chicago, where I was scheduled to present research findings that could lead to major licensing partnerships with automotive manufacturers. The choice between family obligations and business opportunities felt impossible, but the conference timing couldn't be adjusted, and the potential partnerships were too valuable to sacrifice for personal commitments. Carmen's reaction to my absence from Grandmother Esperanza's birthday marked the beginning of family discussions about staging an intervention that would force me to confront the personal costs of business success and consider whether my lifestyle choices were sustainable or ultimately self-destructive. The conversations occurred without my knowledge, but Isabella later described the meetings where relatives expressed growing concern about my isolation and priorities. They're planning something, Isabella warned me during one of her weekend visits to my office, observing my packed schedule and obvious stress levels. Mom and Dad have been talking to aunts and uncles about your situation, and they're convinced that you need help recognizing how business success is affecting your personal life and future happiness. Her warning provided advance notice about family intervention plans, but didn't suggest any reasonable way to address their concerns without fundamentally altering my approach to business management and growth strategies. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would force resolution of tensions that had been building throughout months of trying to balance professional ambitions with family expectations and personal relationship needs. November's chill carried more than seasonal change as my family's whispered conversations grew louder and their concerned glances more frequent. Carmen had stopped being subtle about her matchmaking attempts with Eduardo, while Miguel's questions about my 5-year seed plan became increasingly pointed. The success that should have brought them pride instead fueled their anxiety about my solitary lifestyle. During Thanksgiving dinner, relatives took turns sharing stories about successful women who had missed their chance at love, each tale delivered with meaningful looks in my direction. Isabella watched these performances with growing discomfort, later warning me that our parents were planning something bigger than casual concern. The weight of their collective worry pressed down like storm clouds gathering for an inevitable downpour. December arrived with an ominous text from Miguel that made my stomach drop. Family meeting Sunday, 2 p.m. Everyone will be there. Important discussion about your future. The formal tone told me everything I needed to know about their intentions. Isabella's panicked phone call confirmed my fears they had been coordinating for weeks, preparing what amounted to an intervention. Relatives had been assigned talking points about my isolation, my biological clock, and the emptiness of success without love. Carmen had been crying for days, convinced I was throwing away my chance at happiness for machines and money. The systematic nature of their planning felt both touching and terrifying, knowing that Sunday would bring a confrontation years in the making. The living room had been transformed into a tribunal, chairs arranged in a circle with one seat clearly designated as mine. Extended family filled every corner, their faces wearing expressions of concerned determination. Miguel stood like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict, while Carmen clutched tissues with red-rimmed eyes. Aunt Sophia launched into prepared remarks about successful women who died alone and childless. Uncle Carlos shared statistics about declining fertility rates and marriage prospects for career-focused women over 30. Cousin after cousin took their turn describing the emptiness of professional achievement without personal fulfillment. Each word felt carefully chosen, each story strategically selected to break down my defenses. The love behind their concern was genuine, but the coordinated assault on my choices felt overwhelming and suffocating. As Uncle Carlos delivered his closing argument about work-life balance, my phone buzzed against the coffee table. The notification seemed insignificant against the backdrop of family emotion until I saw the sender, Tesla Motors Legal Department. The subject line made my heart stop. Patent acquisition inquiry. Manufacturing process technology. Immediate response required. $2.4 million offer. The words blurred as I read them again, certain I was hallucinating under stress. Isabella noticed my shock first, leaning over to see the screen before gasping loud enough to interrupt Carlos mid-sentence. The room fell silent as every eye turned toward my phone, then toward me, searching for explanation. My hands shook as I opened the email, revealing Tesla's formal offer to license my automated battery assembly technology for more money than my family could comprehend. The silence stretched endlessly as family members processed what they had just witnessed. Miguel's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally embarrassment as he realized his timing. Carmen stared at my phone as though it might disappear if she looked away. Tesla wanted my garage invention, the same technology they had been pressuring me to abandon for a normal life. Uncle Carlos stammered about how this changed everything while Aunt Sophia struggled to reconcile her marriage advice with external validation worth millions. Isabella beamed with vindication, having always believed in my vision when others couldn't see past their fears. The intervention crumbled as relatives who had come to save me from my choices instead witnessed the exact success they had told me was impossible. Eduardo called within hours, having heard from Carmen about the Tesla offer. His interest in me suddenly renewed with uncomfortable transparency. The money was life-changing, but the real transformation was watching my family finally understand that some dreams are worth the sacrifices they demand. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.